During the 1880s to 1920s, many Jews left Eastern Europe and Russia. Russian Tsars Alexander III and Nicholas II passed a wave of anti-Semitic policies that heavily impacted the day-to-day lives of Jews living in the nation. The Tsarist government's goal was to force the Jewish population into rapid decline, whether from emigration, assimilation, or in the worst case, death. Canada was one of the main destinations for Jewish immigration, and Halifax was the first Canadian city reached by many who crossed the Atlantic. Although Nova Scotia was the first stop for many Jews seeking a new life, an overwhelming majority left for larger cities like Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. That's not to say that none of the new arrivals stayed in Nova Scotia. Halifax had the largest Jewish population in the province. The region with the second largest Jewish population was Cape Breton. Jewish immigrants to Cape Breton brought with them their culture and ideas. After the population grew, synagogues were erected, which served as places of worship and community centers. The first synagogue in Cape Breton, the Congregation of Sons of Israel, was built in Glace Bay in 1902. It was also the first synagogue in Nova Scotia. Later, 3 more synagogues were erected on the island. There was one built in Whitney Pier in 1913,
followed by one in Sydney in 1916.
and lastly, one in New Waterford in 1922. Today, the only remaining active synagogue in Cape Breton
is the Temple Sons of Israel Synagogue in Sydney.
The Elmans were one of many Russian families that immigrated to Canada in the 1900s. Gordon, born in Glace Bay in 1904, was the youngest child of the family. In Gordon's teenage years, he attended the long-standing Sydney Academy. He was a well-rounded student, an academic achiever, a financial editor for the Sydney Academy Record, and a member of the school's championship hockey team in 1921. From a young age, Gordon was dependable and had a strong work ethic. After leaving high school, Gordon and his brothers worked for their father at the Harry Elman Company Limited, a small general store on George Street. After a few years of working with their father, the Elman brothers sought new employment opportunities while still living at home. The oldest brother, Dave, found himself in the wholesale fruit business. On the other hand, Gordon followed his older brother, Alex, into the automobile industry, where they both found themselves working as salesmen at R.J. Logue's automobile dealership. This was the beginning of a long career for Gordon, who became infatuated with cars. It didn't just become a job, but a lifestyle. After years of working hard and saving money, he was finally able to open Elman Motors Limited in 1935, selling Chrysler vehicles. Gordon Elman continued to sell automobiles throughout the 1930s. However, at the end of the decade, the storm clouds of war shrouded the world in darkness, and Canada was at war with Nazi Germany. Years of uncertainty and death followed. But it was not only on the front lines where people sacrificed and fought against fascism. On the home front, like overseas, Canadians had one goal, and that was to defeat Germany and the Axis powers once and for all. Those working in the Cape Breton steel and coal industry took longer and harder days to keep up with production for the front lines. As a result, Canada had one of the most successful wartime economies among Allied powers during the war. The use of nationwide rationing, war bonds, and victory loan campaigns allowed Canada to logistically supply the war efforts overseas. Altogether, Canada amassed $8.8 billion, or $140 billion in today's money, from the victory loan campaigns. In Sydney, the victory loans were held by the Sydney Victory Bond Organization, where Gordon Elman chaired the Employer-Employee Division. The Employer-Employee Division raised $22 million, or $386 million in today's money, in the 9 campaigns that Gordon spearheaded. With the presence of both an unfaltering Allied front and a machine-like home front, the Allies won the war, defeating the Axis powers. On top of serving his country, Gordon Elman dedicated himself to the local community and was elected president of the Sydney Rotary Club in 1959. Later, he served as the district governor of Atlantic Canada from 1964 to 1965. He was a firm believer that one must take an active role in their community in order to help it flourish. Elman's biggest achievement was spearheading the creation of Sydney's Rotary Park in 1956. The park is 52 acres and connects many surrounding communities such as Sydney and Membertou First Nation. 3 years after the launch of Rotary Park, it was handed over to the city of Sydney. The park is still a beautiful and peaceful place that people walk through every day. Since Elman believed that it was his role to help as many people as he could, he made it his goal to donate blood whenever possible. Overall, he donated blood to the Canadian Red Cross Society more than 50 times in his lifetime. Elman was also invested in youth. In 1959, he gave an inspirational address to the graduating students of Morrison Glace Bay High School. For Elman, this was a way to reach out to the students and inspire them to achieve their goals and aspirations.
May I say that there isn't a person in this auditorium who feels more honored than I tonight. For I consider it a distinct privilege to have been asked to speak at this graduating class in my hometown. Up until now, your lives have been guided and shaped by your parents, your teachers, and your friends. High school has brought a certain measure of freedom, but still, there was always someone there to help you with the important decisions. Very shortly, it will become necessary to make decisions on your own, which will determine your destiny and by that same token, the destiny of Cape Breton and of Canada.
Elman was a big supporter of the future of Cape Breton as well as Canada. However, his identity as a Canadian was not the only identity that he fostered. As a Jewish Canadian, Elman worked hard to support and contribute to the local Jewish community in Sydney, including serving as the president of the Temple's Sons of Israel. He was a strong believer that his identity as a Canadian and as a Jew were connected to one another. Although Elman was always interested in his Jewish identity, he really started to explore his roots and became active in the community during the height of the Second World War and the Holocaust. In 1942 and 1943, he was elected to the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, where he assisted with providing relief for Jewish people throughout the world. Following the war, he strongly advocated for the promotion of Jewish identity in Sydney to both Jewish and non-Jewish individuals in the community. For his contributions, Elman was enrolled as a Guardian of Israel in 1955. The 1960s saw the building of relations between Canada and Israel. In 1961, David Ben-Gurion, the president and founder of Israel, came to visit and met Canada's Prime Minister John Diefenbaker in Ottawa. Gordon Elman attended the meeting of the two and personally met Ben-Gurion himself. Elman's meeting with Ben-Gurion wasn't his first interaction with a world leader. After co-purchasing the Isle Royal Hotel in 1950 for $750,000, the hotel was used to host many banquets and saw many important individuals within its walls. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Sir Sidney Holland, being one of the most notable figures that Elman met in 1952. The Isle Royal Hotel was one of his many business ventures later in life. He was also the president of the Sydney Board of Trade. Because of his work with the Board of Trade, he was also elected as the president of the Sydney Industrial Development Corporation, or SIDCO, in 1955. During Elman's term as president of SIDCO, he helped bring the Alsco Company of Canada to Cape Breton. Alsco built a factory on Grand Lake Road that created nearly 200 jobs producing aluminum framing and doors. Elman's various business undertakings were only secondary to Elman's main passion for automobiles, the passion he'd had since his early 20s.
He proudly ran his car dealership that resided on George Street until his passing.
Elman wasn't only selling cars, it was also a large part of his life. He was elected as president of the Maritime Automobile Association and regularly attended their conferences every year. He also gave many talks about the future of the automotive industry and potential innovations. Elman held many raffles to give away cars and money to participants. The raffles were not only to promote his own business, he loved any excuse to give back to the local community, even if it would cost him money in the long run. Unfortunately, in 1974, at the age of 70, Gordon Elman tragically died in a car accident while driving through Sydney. What he accomplished in his lifetime is something not everyone achieves. he went above and beyond to help out his community and the people around him. Gordon Elman will forever be cemented as a man who served his nation, the island, and the members of his Jewish community.